Abe's eyes darted wildly around the dimly lit chamber, his heart racing with anticipation and unease. He had spent years searching for this place, poring over ancient texts and scouring the desolate wasteland for any sign of this lost city. The discovery of the structure had sparked both excitement and trepidation within him. He knew that he was not alone in his quest. The whispers of treasure and forgotten knowledge drew seekers like himself from all corners of the world. Ben's voice was barely above a whisper as he brought the device up to his ear. The faint hum of machinery continued to guide them, but the footsteps continued to grow louder. Abe's gaze locked onto Ben's, a silent understanding passing between them. It was time to decide what to do. "It's coming from that way," Ben whispered, his finger tracing the path the device indicated. The corridor split into 3 distinct paths, each shrouded in darkness. Abe's mind was racing, weighing the pros and cons of proceeding. The older carvings along the walls depicted various beings and rituals, suggesting a people who were far more advanced than anything humanity had experienced before. The discovery of this lost city and its secrets was a chance to rewrite the textbooks. But then, the footsteps stopped, right outside the entrance to the chamber. The air was heavy with anticipation, as if something or someone was waiting just beyond the threshold. Abe took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "We need to be prepared for anything," he warned, his hand instinctively drifting to the makeshift rifle slung over his shoulder. The noise had taken on an unsettling quality, an unnerving feeling that whatever made that noise was watching the group with cold calculation. The silence continued to stretch, as if the group's collective breath was holding its own weight, willing the other side of the door to reveal what secrets and terror lay in store. The footsteps grew louder still, with an unmistakable, deliberate tread that told Abe this was no ordinary creature. It was a human, alive and present, and those footsteps seemed to be saying, "We are not barbarians, we know what's here." "Who's there?" Abe called out loudly, his hand tightening on the grip of the rifle as the air seemed to vibrate with every breath. No response came, but the silence was replaced by the creaking of an unseen door, slowly swinging open to reveal a warm, golden light. The group hesitated, gunshots and rifle discharges forgotten in the face of this sudden invasion. Abe exchanged a wary glance with Ben, who still hovered with the device in his hand. The light spilled out onto an astonishing sight, a vast chamber filled with rows of pulsing crystal structures, each one reflecting the luminous quality of the setting sun. A figure emerged into the light, walking calmly towards the empty space where Abe stood. He was an older man with sharp, angular features, sun-cured skin that spoke of many years spent under an open sky. His eyes, however, shone bright with intelligence and a fierce curiosity that leapt straight into Abe's face. Without a second thought, Ben stepped forward to draw a halt in their progression, halting the motion. Abe and the old man regarded each other as still connected, being united on something. They smiled, and his heart softened instantly. Abe's eyes never left the entrance, his gaze locking onto the space beyond. "We should cautiously step out," he advised, his voice low and measured. Ben nodded in agreement, a tight smile creasing his face. He raised his device once more, a soft beep marking its readiness. The group exchanged a wary glance, then inched forward, their footsteps silently following the path indicated by the device. Abe went first, his hand instinctively clutching the rifle as he ventured out into the darkness. As they exited the chamber, Abe was struck by the eerie, unnatural silence that surrounded them. The sound of the river, which had filled their ears moments before, was now eerily absent. The only sound was the soft shuffling of their own footsteps and the labored breathing of the others. Suddenly, a figure materialized from the shadows, its chest rising and falling with an air of steady, quiet breathing. Abe's rifle instinctively twitched into position, ready to be discharged at a moment's notice. The figure took another step forward, its features slowly taking shape in the dim light. It was a woman, her skin drawn taut with a collection of scars that told a story of their own. Her eyes were empty, both in expression and light, an unnerving void that sent a shiver down Abe's spine. The woman's gaze seemed drawn to Ben, her attention focusing intently on the device still clasped in his hand. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a calculated, almost agonizing movement that seemed to settle on the electronic device. Then she turned towards Abe as if she had noticed something. A faint flutter in her chest hinted at a growing unease or determination, one that seemed to fuel the atmosphere surrounding them. A sense of trepidation settled upon the group, their collective unease slowly growing in proportion to the intensity of each other's glances. Over Ben's shoulder, the woman's eyes flickered to the carvings along the walls of the chamber, the intricate carvings they had noticed moments before the silence was starting to get to everyone. But Abe's voice cut through the tension like a chilled knife. "Let's get ready. Whoever that is, it's going to be a while before it decides what to do." Sarah nodded, her hand fidgeting with the strap of her backpack as she scanned the walls for any possible hiding spots or other hazards. Mike and Emma stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed on the entrance, their hands resting on the hilts of their own makeshift tools, a crude spearhead and a length of twine knotted into a makeshift rope. Ben's eyes remained fixed on the path the device indicated, his ear still pressed against the device. The hum grew slightly louder, as if urging them on. Abe took a cautious step forward, his eyes darting back and forth between Ben and the door. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, but otherwise there were no signs of recent occupation. As they hesitated, the door made of rough-hewn stone seemed to absorb the silence, its presence becoming increasingly dominant. The only sound was the faint echo of dripping water somewhere in the depth of the structure. Abe's gaze drifted back to Ben, and he nodded, deciding on a course of action. "Let's try one of the side paths," he whispered, his hand absently covering the grip on his rifle. The beam of light from the device struggled to find its way through the dense foliage of the carvings, casting an eerie flickering light across the walls. Mike nodded and gestured to Emma, who edged forward to take Ben's place at the device. Emma's eyes scanned the symbol etched into its surface, trying to align it with one on the wall. Her brow furrowed in confusion, but after a moment, the symbol shifted and another image flickered into view. "Try left," Emma called out, her voice barely audible over the beating of Abe's heart. Emma blinked, stepping aside as Mike cautiously moved to take Ben's place at the side of the device. The beam of light pivoted and adjusted to illuminate an alternative path, which twisted and turned into darkness. Abe's eyes locked onto the door, his gaze piercing the darkness that seemed to cling to it like a living entity. The air vibrated with tension, each moment ticking by with agonizing slowness. The silence was oppressive, a physical force that pressed down upon the group, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, the door creaked open, the sound like a scream that shattered the stillness. Abe's hand jerked around the rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger. The others flinched, their eyes scanning the darkness beyond the threshold. A figure stood in the doorway, its features indistinct in the dim light. Abe's heart sank, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. He cautiously stepped forward, his hand hovering over the rifle's stock. As they drew nearer, a faint glow began to emanate from the figure's outstretched hand. The light was soft, ethereal, and seemed to dance in the air around them. The figure's features began to take shape, its features blurring into a humanoid form that seemed almost fossilized. Their eyes met, and for a moment they locked gazes, two disparate minds struggling to comprehend the other. Abe felt a jolt of fear, his mind reeling with questions. What was this creature? How did it come to be here? And what did it want? The creature took a step forward, its movements fluid and almost preternatural. Abe's hand instinctively tightened around the rifle, his senses on high alert. He was aware of the others watching him, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and fear. Ben's voice broke the silence, his tone barely above a whisper. "Abe, what is it?" Abe's gaze remained fixed on the creature, his mind searching for answers. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. "I'm not sure," he admitted, his voice barely audible. The creature took another step forward, its eyes never leaving Abe's face. A low hum began to emanate from its outstretched hand, the sound growing in intensity until it became a low, thrumming vibration that seemed to echo through the very marrow of their bones. Then, in an instant, the creature vanished. The light faded and the sound ceased. The group stood frozen, their eyes scanning the empty space where the creature had stood. The silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the cacophony that had filled the air just moments before. The group stood there, stuck in a paralysis of fear and anticipation, waiting for what would come next. And then, without warning, the floor beneath their feet gave way, the sound of crumbling stone echoing through the chamber as the ancient structure began to shift and tremble. The air remained heavy with anticipation, the group frozen in indecision, waiting for the unknown entity to make its move. Abe's eyes darted between the three paths, weighing the risks and potential rewards of each decision. Ben's hand remained fixed on the device, its faint hum a reminder of the unseen presence guiding them. Suddenly, a faint scratching noise echoed through the corridor, like fingernails on stone. The scratching grew louder, until it became a series of menacing knocks, as if someone or something was trying to scratch its way through the door. The group exchanges nervous glances, their hearts racing in unison. Abe's voice was low and steady as he stepped forward. "We need to find out who or what is on the other side of this door." He turned to Ben. "Let's get closer, but stay sharp." Ben nodded, and with a quiet rustle, the group moved cautiously forward, their footsteps echoing through the corridor. The scratching noise grew louder still until it became a rhythmic pounding like a heartbeat waiting to be answered. As they approached the door, the scratching stopped. The silence that followed was oppressive, heavy with tension. Abe raised a hand, signaling for the group to halt. The door creaked slowly as if pushed from the other side. Abe's hand instinctively drifted toward the handle, his fingers tightening around the grasp. And then, in a movement that seemed almost calculated, the door swung open. A figure loomed in the entrance, hunched and twisted, its body distorted by some unseen force. The scratching noise had come from its arthritic joints, a grim reminder of the cost of survival in this alien world. The figure regarded the group with an unblinking gaze, its eyes sunken and lifeless. Abe's breath caught in his throat, but Ben stepped forward, the device at the ready. "Hello?" Ben called out, his voice hesitant. The figure did not respond, its gaze fixed on the group with an unnerving intensity. Abe took a step forward, his eyes locked on the figure's twisted form. "We mean no harm," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're only here to uncover the secrets of this place." The figure tilted its head ever so slightly, as if considering the words. And in that moment, the group saw something that made their blood run cold. A faint flicker of recognition danced across the figure's twisted features, a spark of life hidden deep within its arthritic form. The group held its collective breath, unsure of what the figure's next move would be. But as they watched, transfixed, the figure's gaze seemed to soften, its claws relaxing ever so slightly. And in that moment, Abe knew that their journey was far from over.